Welcome to a new episode of CeeviewStories. Today we are covering the log monitor, and inspired by the television series Doctor Who, we have titled this story Dr. Logman and the Power of Data. The log monitor is, together with the system or the CDM monitor, among the oldest and most used probes or monitors in the monitoring business. Much like Doctor Who is among the longest running TV series ever. It started in 1963 and is still running. Interestingly, Doctor Who series started as an educational family program, but this idea was dropped after the first season. A piece of trivia which might be useful in the next quiz you're attending. The log monitor allows for extraction of vital information from the huge data volumes software and hardware logging generates. And while Ceeview's WinEvent and syslog monitors covers a significant amount of today's log files, the log monitor allows any file to be monitored using advanced pattern recognition as well as mapping of causes, severities and timestamps. More of that later. And as all Ceeview monitors, you can just as easily deploy a monitor to hundreds of servers as to one server. So how do we get started with log monitoring? Well, it's actually pretty easy, at least for a basic monitor. You point the monitor to the log file or files to be monitored, and then you define the text pattern indicating situation of interest, i.e. situation which are errors or problems, and which should have an impact on the monitor's health. That's it. And our first hands-on demo will focus on just such a scenario. Of course, more complex scenarios will require more time to configure, but as the second demo will show, it's still a fairly pleasant experience. Let's have a brief look at how the log monitor processes log files. The monitor identifies the most recently updated log file and retrieves all log records which have been added since the last time we processed that log file. For each of these log records, we match it against the filters or the text patterns defined, and if a log record matches all of the defined filters, we generate a new health index and corresponding reasons. And this is actually what we then will see in Ceeview. We'll revisit this illustration before the second demonstration in order to explain some of the more advanced features of the log monitor. Okay, we are finally ready to have some fun. Our first demonstration will show how easy it is to create a log monitor. This monitor will search for a specific pattern in a log file and set the monitor's health to orange, that is major health reduction, and include a part of the log entry as a recent cause for that health change. Okay, so at the top here we have the Ceeview application, and at the bottom a sample log file. The log file currently have 3 log entries or log lines, and our task is to trigger on log lines which has the text error in one of its columns, and each column seems to be separated by spaces. So we are gonna search for error, and if we find error, we are gonna return the remaining part of the line as reason. Each column is separated by spaces. So here we have a date column, we have a time column, severity column, etc. Let's create the monitor. A descriptive name. Where should the monitor run? I'll run it on my server. Let's point it to the log file. The expiry time is for how long a log entry or reason matching a log entry is gonna be valid. So if I use 3600, a reason would time out and the health index would change accordingly after an hour. I'll use 24 hours. Okay, I need to create a profile. I'll just use one profile since this is a very basic monitor. So let's call the profile basic. It's going to be so basic, it only has one pattern or filter. Search for error. I wanted to use a pattern or type of pattern searching which splits the log record using space as separator, which is what FromWord does by default. I can change the separator if I want to. I'm currently in a basic mode. I could go to advanced mode where I get much more options. We'll have a look at that in the second demonstration. So FromWord will use space default as separator, and it will return as reason if it's used for reason mapping, the remaining part of the line, which is just what I want. Okay, and I want a pattern error. We can use regex if we want to, for instance here, but let's keep it simple. And I want to use this filter as the source for the reason text which we generate. And finally, what kind of severity should this or health impact should this log entry cause? Major, that's what I said in the introduction, wasn't it? Yes. Okay, and we just need to do a create, and we need to be patient. The logmon is configured to run every 60 seconds on my system, so it can take up to a minute's time before it will actually trigger. Well, we were lucky. So here we have two reasons. They matches the two log entries in the log file. We can have a look at this using the summary view. We have a health index of 48. It comes from the log monitor. Okay, that looks good. Let's add a new reason. Sorry, a new log record to the file. Okay, third CPU, and we'll save it. Again, it can take up to 60 seconds before we see this reflected in the Ceeview GUI. And here it appeared. So everything is working as expected. Now there is a few things you probably noticed. Let's have a look at the reason. The reason is by default constructed by the monitor name, the profile name, and the part of the log record which we configured the monitor to return as reason. And the reason has a timestamp. And if we have a look at the timestamp, it's about 1339, while what I have in the log record is 9 o'clock or 10 minutes past 9. The reason for this is that we did not ask the monitor to use the timestamp of the log. We are going to do that in the second demonstration. Default behavior is to use the timestamp when Ceeview detected the change in the monitor in the log file. Right, so that concludes our first demonstration, and hopefully you agree with me. It's fairly easy to create a basic monitor. We now understand how to create simple log monitors, but there is so much more to Logmon than we have seen so far. We will now extend the basic monitor we created to cover for all of the severities error, fatal and warning. And we will require such entries to be related to disk or CPU problems. Furthermore, to complicate things, we will require the monitor to set the reason severity based on the severity from the log file and to use the log file's timestamp. Let's talk a little bit about log monitor's functionality, which we did not use in the first demonstration. Firstly, profiles. In the first demonstration we used the default profile only. However, a log monitor may have multiple profiles, and we can use the profiles to control how a log entry is going to be processed and how it's gonna return data, like how it's gonna set the severity or the text for the reason. We will have a brief look at this in the coming demonstration. Furthermore, we have the ability to map both the timestamp of the log record to the timestamp of the reason, as well as the severity from the log record to the reason. And finally, as we have seen, we can map the content of a log record or part of the content of a log record to the reason text. And in the next demonstration we're going to make use of all these types of mappings. Before we start creating the second log monitor, let's clear the health from the first demonstration. At the bottom we have another sample log file. It's much the same as from the first demonstration, where we have a timestamp, we have severity, and we have some text which might be of interest. What we want to do is to find all log records which have error or fatal or warning, and which either includes CPU or disk in the text. And we want to make use of the timestamp from the log record. Let's now create the new monitor. We'll run it on the same server. We'll use the same interval. And a different log file. We need a profile. Let's call it advanced. we need to create a few filters. We'll start with the message filter, get reason. It's responsible for retrieving the part of the log record which we will use as reason text. Filter type line treats a log record as a big line, for which we apply the regular expression. And the expression in this case is anything that starts with a space followed by a hyphen, then another space, and a string containing CPU or disk. We'll use this filter as our message filter, and we'll create the next, which is the severity filter. It matches something starting with the ending square bracket, a space, and then the string fatal or error or warning, followed by a space and then 0 or more characters. That will be our message filter, severity filter. And since the log file operates with severities which are not identical to the severities which Ceeview uses, we need to create a mapping. So fatal will map to critical, error will map to major, warning will map to minor. And anything returned by the severity filter, which does not have a mapping now, will use the default severity, which is critical in this case. Okay, and our final filter, get timestamp. It is responsible for getting the timestamp from the log record. The timestamp will start at the beginning of the line and goes up to the first space, which is followed by a starting square bracket. Timestamps can have various formats, so we need to specify the format of the timestamp. Year, month, day, hour, minute, seconds. Let's create it. And wait for the log record to be read and health index produced. Excellent. So let's check the reasons produced to see if they matches our log sample log file. We have the disk full at major, disk full error, correct, and we have the CPU struggling at critical, CPU's struggling at fatal, right. Okay, let's make this slightly more complicated. Let's introduce another profile. Right, let's add a new profile. We'll call it just for fun. We need a message filter, get reason label, type of line, and the pattern. Well, we'll just insist that there should be a hyphen there somewhere, and we'll output everything after the hyphen. And it is a message filter. We'll keep all the other defaults, which means that it should produce reasons with critical severity. Okay, let's save it. And all we need to do now is to add a new entry to our log file. Okay, this disk is even fuller. And we'll save it. And we will patiently wait. We didn't have to be patient for long. Let's see, here we have the new reason. It's detected by the advanced profile in LogmonDemo B. This disk is even fuller, maps correctly to major, and as we can see, the timestamp also is correctly set. And our profile Just for Fun also discovered this log record. It has a slightly different timestamp. Because we didn't create the mapping, it uses the mapping or the timestamp, Ceeview's timestamp, when it found the log record. 17 minutes past 5 o'clock. Right, that concludes the second demonstration. Just to finish off, I'd like to mention that you might have noticed that understanding regexp will make your log monitor even more valuable. And luckily there are lots of websites explaining regular expressions and also testing your regular expressions. Regexp 101 is one of them. Let's see if we can demonstrate how to use it. So let's say we have a few sample messages. We can use what we had in the log, we'll put that in our test strings, and we will use one of our filters here, and the tester will show where the mappings are and how it actually matches these, how the patterns actually match. It's very useful. This concludes today's presentation of Ceeview Logmon. Feel free to contact us for further information regarding the log monitor or other parts of Ceeview. And please let us know if there are other features in Ceeview you'd like us to cover in the upcoming Ceeview stories. And until the next Ceeview story, I'll leave you with the following quote from Doctor Who. I am and always will be the optimist, the hoper of far-flung hopes and the dreamer of improbable dreams. Have a nice day.